biblically accurate angel.
Ooh. Biblically accurate angel.
Have you seen what a biblically accurate
Yes.
angel looks
Yeah,
like?
they look like aliens.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, they look like geometric patterns.
Yeah.
I always wonder what Tucker Carlson's convinced that aliens and devils are that's what like angels and devils and aliens are all the same thing. He thinks that they're not visiting from somewhere else, that they've always been here, and that there's some sort of spiritual aspect to like the UFO encounter, UAP phenomenon.
Oh, I see. Yes. Well, there's a lot of interesting pictures that are, drawn on cave walls.
Oh, yeah.
And things like that.
Oh, we've gone over a shit ton of them.
Yeah.
And then also ancient religious art where it looks like people are in vehicles flying through the sky. I'm sure you've seen those
I've
too,
seen
right?
those too.
Yeah, like what is that? Like what are you trying to... There's no other stuff that you're in that thing that's fantastical. Everything else is like an accurate representation of life at that time, except for these people that are in these flying things in the sky. Like what is that? We just don't know, unfortunately.
When I looked at all of the credible UFO reports, the only ones that really had no explanation, I actually asked ChatGPT, of all of the credible UFO, of all of the UFO reports, which ones have not in some way been sort of explained, right? And which ones are the ones that are still like, and the one that was not, the one that's still sort of outstanding is the USS Nimitz experience.
Yeah, Commander David Fravor.
Right.
Yeah, I've had him on the podcast talking about it.
Have you really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to be the most compelling.
Aliens are angels and devils. And that's like when you're hearing about like all those stories in the Bible about fallen angels and devils, like these people think that they were referring to aliens.
That fell from the sky?
No, it's just the term, the way they're phrasing it is like fallen angel, meaning like Satan, and that there's good angels and bad angels, there's demons and angels. What these people believe, and I don't necessarily agree with it, nor do I even understand it enough that I can argue against it, but they believe that all these stories are really referencing a spiritual force that's always here all the time and sometimes exists in the physical form. And it might be existing as these things that we keep looking for, like aliens and UFOs, and it might be doing that maybe even to comfort us, or maybe to be more plausible, or maybe to hide the true nature of what they are. So it will present as if it's from another planet. But really what it is some sort of interdimensional spiritual being that may or may not be evil. It might be good, it might be evil, and there might be a bunch of different kinds out there in the world. But that these stories from like the ancient Hindu texts, and Billy Carson talks a lot about that, and a bunch of other people talk about these different stories from these ancient texts that have people either interacting with sky people or someone coming from the sky and interacting with them. And they think that a lot of these things might be talking about the same thing, and that these aliens that people are encountering, there's some sort of an interdimensional being that has essentially always been here. What do you think the UFO phenomenon is?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, that there are a lot of different varieties of it. But when we look at, like we were looking at the Francis of Assisi and the kind of historical things and the abductions and things like that, I think that it's been around for a long time, and that these are things that are in communication with us. So what I do in my book, both the books that I wrote about this, is I talk to people who I think represent thousands of people. So each person in the book represents thousands, if not more, maybe many thousands of people who have had experiences and the ways in which they interpret them. So all of the people seem to have had experiences where now what they want to do is they actually want to work for justice in different ways. Like Jose, the veteran in my book, he's working with young people and helping them deal with being addicted to social media and things like that, and helping them get through life, which is really hard right now. And that's what he's doing. And then you look at Dr. Whiteley, right? So she's working in this space where she's trying to, help people deal with the fact that they're seeing things that, that could down planes and things like that. And she's helping people talk about that. She's helping people. Each person is somehow doing what I'm suggesting that I think is an out, this kind of structural injustice that we see. So I think that this is a transformational thing without the drugs, is what's going on. Like some kind of massive experience that people are having, and now it's getting out, and people are being able to talk to each other through Reddit communities and different types of social media. So it is it's we did see religions, when they become viral at one point. We've never seen it in an age where we have digital technology, but this is what we're seeing now.
What do you think the physical objects are?
Well, okay, so this is something that's very interesting. We just looked at the Shroud of Turin. I believe that there are these, I would call them, and this is just my own non-scientific term, interdimensional objects. They're objects that have characteristics of our dimension and some other dimension.
Okay, so if they're spiritual beings, which I believe they are, like it's a binary. They're either, if you're on team good or team bad, you can assign any name to it you want, but like, what are these things? Are they good or bad? And I think some of them are bad. And if the U.S. government knows that, or elements, the people within the U.S. government know that, then they're serving a bad force. And
well, when you say spiritual, like what makes you draw that conclusion that they're spiritual?
What's the obvious? I mean, spiritual may be the wrong word. Supernatural. They're beyond nature as we understand it. I mean, obviously they are. I mean, just chart their physical behavior. It doesn't, it goes outside of what we understand about physics. No visible means of propulsion, coming at indescribable speed, hitting the ocean, continuing at speeds that are impossible undersea. I mean, in other words, if I take a 9mm round or 7.62 by 39 and shoot you at 50 yards underwater in a swimming pool, and it's even more intense in salt water because it's denser, you could catch the bullet if it even makes it to you, right? So if you have a craft, any object underwater that's traveling at 500 knots as measured by sonar, right there you're challenging our understanding of physics. Like, what is that? How can that be? So yeah,
they've tracked that. They've tracked things going 500 knots under the sea.
Yeah, really. Yeah, much faster than any object can actually go undersea. Yo, for sure. Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on underwater, and a lot. And there's video of these things coming out of the sky into the water and also emerging from the water.
Right.
Yeah. So
it's all so blurry, though.
I don't think it's that
transmedium video.
Yeah, I don't think some of it's that blurry. I think some of it's crystal clear.
We just don't have access to it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Just we haven't seen it.
Correct.
So they have some stuff
for sure. So, but there's just a lot going on underwater, and it's measured. And so, whatever. I mean, these are all, again, this is like the most obvious observable level of it. But then you just ask yourself, like, what is this actually? And, if there's been extensive knowledge of this for decades, like maybe 80 years at least, if not going back to the 30s, 90 years, to what end? So there are two possible explanations, obvious explanations. The first is the one you often hear, which is this is so heavy that if the public were to know about it, it would be just disruptive. It would be too scary. Like, you don't want to scare people for no good reason. There's nothing we can do about it. And you also don't want to suggest that, the U.S. military isn't capable of protecting the country, the homeland. And it does suggest that. If you can't control these objects in your airspace, and that's known, if they can't, that's known, okay? Then that suggests a limit to the power of the U.S. military, and you don't want to tell people that because then they won't believe that they're safe. I get it.
Yeah.
Ryan Graves, he's another fighter pilot, and that was off the East Coast. So the Nimitz is off the coast of San Diego. But off the East Coast, they upgraded their sensors in 2014 on the fighter jets, and then immediately started encountering these things that defied known physics that were in the sky. And, and these guys had these encounters with these things that were like a cube inside of a sphere that's like motionless at 120 knot winds and no heat signature and moving through the sky. They don't know what the fuck they are.
What do you say to the theory of the possibility that is sort of black ops? Like the idea that the SR-71, I think,
Blackbird.
The Blackbird. There's a company called Skunk Works, right? And they were responsible for the declassification of that aircraft, and then I think the F-111 or the stealth bombers, and But since then, and that was like 25 years ago or more, there have not been any more declassifications.
Yeah, it's a good argument.
I'm curious as to like what in 25 years, based on the technology that we've been able to see that makes it to modern society, how much is held back, and what we don't see. It just interests me, and I don't know. I don't have an answer. I'm not asking myself whether I actually believe that it's almost unlikely that we have that technology, but because I feel like it would just take so much more than we may be capable of to cover it up, but maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it would. I think there's a high likelihood that a lot of this stuff is ours. And I think one of the reasons for that statement is that this stuff always happens over military airspace.
Yeah.
East Coast and West Coast. So the East Coast stuff, the Ryan Graves stuff, they're doing it over areas where these fighter jet pilots run training missions.
Yeah.
And then the same thing as the West Coast stuff.
Right.
Like where it's off the coast of San Diego, which is like tons of military out there.
Yeah.
Aliens might be living among us disguised as humans or in a base inside the moon, according to a new Harvard study. Yo, when there's Harvard studies is saying there might be a base inside the moon. How wild are things right now?
Oh, my God.
This is so crazy.
But none of this is, it's not really that, like, shocking.
Right. It's not that shocking.
Once you have knowledge of the other realm, nothing's impossible.
No.
Nothing in this life is impossible or fucking shocking anymore.
Well, it's still shocking.
It's shocking
exciting,
slightly,
but space is insane. This is way less insane than what we know about space.
I mean, space and water. The deep sea is something that's fucking crazy as this to me.
As crazy and undiscovered.
It's fucking nuts. There is an end. It stops. But does it really?
I think it does. But the thing is, like, they don't know what the fuck is down there. They're always finding a bunch of new cool fish.
That Mariana Trench?
Let me see what it says. The researchers have investigated so-called cryptoterrestrials. These could be disguising themselves as humans to fit in, may come from Earth's future, or might have descended from intelligent dinosaurs. This guy's from Harvard.
Men in Black.
This guy got all the mushrooms. They're probably doing a Harvard mushroom study, and this dude just stole the stock.
Honestly, I think, look, the study was just to come up with an answer. Like, give us some fucking answer.
Some other dimension has the capability, or something from some other dimension has the capability of transporting a physical object into our realm.
Or even imprinting onto a physical object. Yeah.
How so?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think
What do
that's
you mean by, what does that mean, imprinting onto
So
a
with the
physical
Shroud of
object?
Turin,
Okay.
we see the imprint of, the image and...
If it's real.
Yeah, if it's real. But it's an anomalous object. So we do have, from Gary Nolan, engineered objects that we don't know how they're engineered, but they definitely look like they're, it's off planet. I would call the kinds of things that we see in the historical record interdimensional types of things. Now, how? I don't know, Joe. Okay, so I just don't know. But I do think that scientists in the government know that these things exist, and they would like to figure it out. And so part of disclosure, the disclosure movement, is outsourcing this and trying to get as many people as possible to help in figuring it out.
What do you think when they use the term donations? What do you think the purpose of that is? If there is an object that is purposely released into our, like I'm sure you're aware of cargo cults, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So with cargo cults, for people that don't know, there's been some islands during World War I and World War II where planes landed there and they left, and these people, they created these statues of these planes and they worshiped them. And
they wanted them to come back.
Yes.
Yeah, because they got food and
Yes.
all kinds of wonderful things from the planes.
Right. And
yeah. They thought of them as deities.
Right. The same way we
Yeah.
would think of something from
Like
somewhere
this.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that in my field has been called the cargo cult, the UFO cargo cult, right? And obviously Tyler and James view these parts as donate. They call it the donation site, right? So giving it the idea
Is that just one theory?
Yeah, that's just one theory.
Are there other theories that there's a biological organism that encounters a lightning storm and it actually crashes and there's physical bodies?
Oh yeah,
that
there
recovered?
is that. Yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
Going
What's your
around.
take on that? Because that's one of the things that Grush talked about and some of the other people talked about, that there are biological things that have been recovered.
Well, what impressed me about what he said was that he used the term biologics. And I actually know that term because that's the same term that Tyler was talking about when he was creating materials in anti-gravity spaces on space shuttles and such. So I was wondering, because David Grush does get his information from people allegedly in the programs, but he's never seen these materials that I know of.
I think he has some firsthand experience that he was not able to talk about.
Okay.
That he's alluding to.
Okay.
What is the U.S. government's relationship with these things? And there's evidence that there is a relationship and that it's longstanding. And that raises like a lot of questions about intent. And so like, what is that? And I just personally decided, and people have been hurt by these things. That's a fact. That's a fact. It's a knowable fact. It's a provable fact. And killed. And I'm not saying millions of people have been killed by whatever these things are, but people have been killed, and it's known because it's working its way through the courts out of the VA. So, I don't know, an object that is by definition supernatural, it's above the laws of nature as we understand them, and that has resulted in the deaths of people. We don't spend enough time thinking about like what that adds up to. Like, not good, actually, not good.
How many people do you think have died from these things?
I don't know, but I mean,
And is it radiation sickness? Is it like what's the
so
cause
the person
of
that
death?
I talked to, I interviewed someone who was a Stanford medical school professor who's out there and worth talking to, by the way. And
You talking about Gary Nolan?
that's exactly who I'm talking about. Who's effectively an expert witness in these cases, so he's an expert in brain injury. Do you know him?
Yeah.
Yeah. Entirely credible person. Checks all the boxes that I care about. He's got patents, so he's like a lot of Stanford University professors. He's like independently rich. I mean, he flew to, I live in a remote place, and he flew to my place at his own expense because he wanted to tell his story. So he's got no profit motive here. He's the most highly credentialed person at the university, practically, at Stanford Medical School. We consider that a big deal. And he's worked on this for over 10 years. Assessing the injuries to U.S. servicemen from being in close proximity to these objects or having contact with these objects. And his conclusion, as you know, because you've talked to him, is that there's some kind of energy coming off here that scrambles people's brains or kills them. And it's not exactly radiation, at least in his telling to me. So anyway, but the point is, people have died.
Yeah.
And so, it does raise a lot of questions about like what the hell, right? What the hell? American citizens have died and you're hiding it? Why are you hiding that? Why would you hide that?
I do believe that there's some programs that are operational, and there's a great podcast. Jesse Michaels has an amazing YouTube channel that's he's covered this stuff like really extensively, and he's a brilliant guy. Mm-hmm. He really understands it, and they were working on some anti-gravity technology in the 1960s, and most likely they continued that work.
Artificial horizon technology and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That I mean, it's got to have come far since then.
Yeah, and there's the idea that they could hide all that stuff. No, they could never hide it. Of course they could. They definitely could. You being naive. You being naive as to how much the government
No,
can hide.
I'm only asking the question.
Not you. I don't mean you. I mean people that say that.
I actually pretty much that's where I lean towards when it comes to that.
I think some of it But some of it also could be from somewhere else. And I think some of it just exhibits, like the Nimitz one. Okay, this is 2004. So this tic-tac goes from more than 50,000 feet above sea level to sea level in less than a second.
Yeah.
Like 7/8 of a second.
Sure.
Like, that's crazy.
That is.
That's
and
crazy.
you're right.
Like,
and
what is that?
And it changes it when you remember how long ago these things were being seen.
Right. Because this is 2004. But then you go back to the 1960s. If they're really working on anti-gravity technology back then, it's possible that they could have created a drone.
Right.
The thing is, like, could a human being survive inside of those things at those extreme speeds? Well, the question is, like, what are they experiencing in that? Because if it's a gravity device, if it's moving, if it's manipulating gravity, so it might not have G-forces at all. It might be operating in a completely different paradigm.
Yeah, well, there may be sort of just, trillions of alternate sort of, momentum shifts in the outside protective layer that balance out whatever's happening on the inside to the point where, they're using this crazy technology.
That's also why the argument is that they're blurry. Like, so a lot of the photographs of these things are blurry. It might be because they're actually existing in some sort of a gravity, like, void.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing is not exactly what's there. You're seeing it through, like, a dirty windshield.
When we talk about aliens, we talk about the search for extraterrestrial life. We kind of mean E.T., don't we? We mean something that we can talk to.
In the vastness of the cosmos, we can't be the only ones, right? There's just too much unknown about space for anyone to dismiss out of hand the chance of finding other intelligent life. Considering that life has developed and adapted to survive in some of Earth's harshest environments, just look at tardigrades, it's reasonable to assume that other interplanetary life forms have done the same. One of two things can be true. Either we are the only intelligent life in the universe, or we are not, as famous author Arthur C. Clarke memorably put it. Both are terrifying in their own ways. There's a good probability we have neighbors out there in the ether, since numerous findings and hypotheses from some of the finest minds in science point to the potential that there's something beyond us in the universe. Brian Cox says it's time to look at the evidence. The renowned physicist claims that there are indications of advanced alien civilizations in our skies. Is there any proof of his outlandish claim? Do aliens exist or not? Are they already among us? Let's find out. The first open meeting of NASA's new Task Force on Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, UAPs, took place recently. Any object in the sky that cannot be instantly associated with an aircraft or well-known natural occurrence is referred to as a UFO, or Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena in official terms. Meanwhile, there have been pieces of evidence of extraterrestrial life in our sky. On October 19, 2017, Robert Warwick, a Canadian astronomer, was looking through pictures taken by the Pan-STARRS 1 telescope when he saw something peculiar. Warwick noticed a dot of light moving at over 200,000 miles per hour. Warwick informed his co-workers, who started monitoring the dot from several observatories. The more they observed, the more perplexing its actions appeared. It was a little object, about the size of a city block. It had to be very peculiarly shaped, since the brightness of the object fluctuated so drastically as it tipped through space. It was either flat and round, like a celestial pizza, or long and thin, like a cosmic cigar. It was speeding away more or less in a straight line as opposed to circling the sun on an oval path. Astronomers came to the conclusion that the bright dot was an entirely new phenomenon. It was an interstellar object, a transient visitor from a solar system far, far away. It became known as one I-2017 U1 in the International Astronomical Union's formal naming. It was given the more expressive name Oumuamua, which is Hawaiian, and loosely translates to scout. Even interstellar objects are subject to the laws of gravity, but Oumuamua seemed to be being propelled by an additional force as it sped forward. The gases that comets emit, which create their distinctive tails, give them an extra kick. However, Oumuamua lacked a tail. The telescopes pointed at it also found no signs of any of the byproducts of outgassing, such as water vapor or dust. This object is undoubtedly unusual, and regrettably, Oumuamua is already too dark and distant to allow for any additional observations. Astronomers carefully examined the data and eliminated one theory after another. The strange motion of Oumuamua could not be explained by a collision with another object, by interactions with the solar wind, or by the Yarkovsky effect, which is named for a Polish engineer who lived in the 18th century. One team of scientists came to the conclusion that the best explanation for one I-2017 was that it was a miniature comet, with an undiscovered tail due to its unusual chemical composition. Another group asserted that the majority of Oumuamua was made of frozen hydrogen. The appeal of this theory, a variation of the mini-comet theory, was that it provided an explanation for the object's unusual shape. It had mostly melted away by the time it arrived in our solar system, just like an ice cube on the ground. Avi Loeb, a Harvard astrophysicist, provided the account of Oumuamua that was by far the most amazing. Loeb contended that Oumuamua didn't act like an interstellar object would because it wasn't one. It was created by a culture from another planet. Shmuel Bialy, a Harvard postdoc, and Loeb suggested that the only way to economically explain Oumuamua's non-gravitational acceleration was to assume that the object was produced. It may be the alien equivalent of an abandoned car, floating in interstellar space as debris, or it could be a fully operational probe that had been sent to our solar system for reconnaissance. According to Loeb and Bialy, the second scenario was the more likely one because the odds of humanity ever finding the object were extremely tiny if it were just some alien trash drifting across the galaxy. Unsurprisingly, a lot of attention was paid to Loeb and Bialy's theory. However, several scientists disagree with Loeb, including astronomer Benjamin Weiner of the University of Arizona and astrophysicist Paul M. Sutter of The Ohio State University. Loeb increased his efforts instead of backing down. He attacked the frozen hydrogen idea with Thiem Hoang, a scientist at the Korea Astronomy and Space Science Institute. The pair claimed that it was unrealistic to think that solid hydrogen would be floating around in space in another paper that was jam-packed with equations. And even if a frozen chunk did manage to form, a block the size of Oumuamua could not possibly survive an interstellar voyage. Considering the possibility that H2 particles could form, sublimation by collisional heating would, in a sense, vaporize them before they had a chance to take off. In Extraterrestrial, Loeb explains his thinking in the following manner. Without resorting to some form of undetectable outgassing, the only explanation for Oumuamua's peculiar acceleration is to postulate that the object was driven by solar radiation, or more specifically, photons bouncing off its surface. And the object could only be pushed by solar radiation if it were very thin, no thicker than a millimeter, with low density, and had a sizably high surface area. Such a thing would act as a sail, but one propelled by light instead of wind. People make sails, not the natural world. Consequently, according to Loeb, Oumuamua must have been designed, built, and launched by an extraterrestrial intelligence. In 1995, Swiss astronomers Michel Mayer and Didier Queloz discovered the first planet to be discovered around a sun-like star. The planet was given the official name 51 Pegasi b, since its host star, 51 Pegasi, was in the constellation Pegasus. It was later given the name Dimidium, thanks to a new naming scheme. The Oumuamua of its day, the finding of Dimidium generated international news. The planet's mass, which is around 150 times that of Earth, proved to be extraordinarily huge. It had to be close to its star, because it was whipping around it once every 4 days. It was also likely incredibly hot, with a surface temperature of up to 800 degrees. The discovery of such a huge body so near to its parent star shocked astronomers, who had to create a brand new classification for it and call it a hot Jupiter. The Kepler Space Telescope, which was created to find exoplanets using a different approach, was launched by NASA in 2009. A planet's passage in front of its star causes a very minor dimming of the star's brightness. Kepler detected variations in the brightness of more than 150,000 stars around the constellations Cygnus and Lyra. During the last transit of Venus in 2012, spectators on Earth could see a small black dot sneak over the sun. It had discovered 1,000 exoplanets by the year 2015. By the time it ceased operations in 2018, 1,600 more had been exposed. The Milky Way has at least 4 billion sun-like stars, which implies that there are theoretically between 1.5 billion and 2.4 billion planets in our galaxy that may support life. Nobody is certain of what percentage of potentially habitable planets are really populated, but even if it's a negligible number, there are still millions, possibly tens of millions of planets in the galaxy that may be teeming with life. Ellen Stofan, who was NASA's senior scientist at the time and is now the director of the National Air and Space Museum, declared at a public event a few years ago that she thought definitive evidence of life beyond Earth would be discovered within the next 2 decades. When, not if, life is discovered on other planets, what will it look like? That's the question the majority of scientists are now asking. Natural selection, according to Arik Kirschenbaum, is the foundation of comprehending cosmic zoology. He claims that this is the inevitable mechanism by which life arises, and that it is consequently not just restricted to the planet Earth, or even to organisms made of carbon. Regardless of how extraterrestrial biochemistry operates, natural selection will be at work. According to Kirschenbaum, it follows from this premise that life on other worlds will have evolved, if not along similar lines to life on our planet, then at least along generally recognizable lines. Feathers are a helpful trait, for instance on Earth where the atmosphere is primarily composed of nitrogen and oxygen. Feathers presumably wouldn't develop on a planet where the clouds are ammonia-based, but we should not be surprised to find the same functions, that is, flight, that we observe here. Likewise, according to Kirschenbaum, alien organisms are likely to evolve some kind of land-based locomotion. Life on alien planets is very likely to have legs, as well as an information exchange mechanism. Aliens in the dark will click like bats and dolphins, and aliens in the clear skies will flash their colors at each other. Even more unsettling than coming across sentient aliens is, possibly, the fact that we haven't heard from any of them yet. The Fermi paradox is the name given to the puzzle of why this is the case. One day in 1950, while launching at Los Alamos National Laboratory, the physicist Enrico Fermi turned to some co-workers and asked, "Where are they?" At least, this is how one version of the story goes. According to another version, he asked, "But where is everybody?" This occurred years before Pan-STARRS 1 and the Kepler mission. Fermi believed that despite this, Earth was a fairly typical planet orbiting a fairly common star. He reasoned that there should be civilizations that are far older and more developed than our own, some of which should already be skilled in intergalactic travel. Strangely enough, nobody had arrived. Since then, a great deal of human intelligence has been spent pondering Fermi's query. Frank Drake, an astronomer, developed the eponymous Drake equation in the 1960s, which provides a technique to determine how many alien cultures there are that we can expect to speak with. The number of potentially habitable planets, the percentage of potentially habitable worlds that will develop advanced technology, and the persistence of technologically advanced civilizations are important variables in the equation. As the number of planets with a chance of supporting life has increased, the "where are they" mystery has only become darker. A French researcher named Jean-Pierre Rospard made the claim that aliens haven't contacted us because they're keeping Earth under a galactic quarantine, realizing that it would be culturally disruptive for us to learn about them, at a session on the topic conducted in Paris in 2019. Loeb suggests that Fermi could provide the solution to his own conundrum. Only in the last century or two has humanity developed the ability to communicate via radio waves with extraterrestrial beings. The atomic bomb was developed by Fermi and his Manhattan Project co-workers 75 years ago, while the hydrogen bomb was developed a few years later by Edward Teller, a lunch companion of Fermi's at Los Alamos. So not long after humanity developed the ability to communicate with other worlds, it also developed the ability to exterminate itself. We have continued to devise new means to destroy ourselves since the development of nuclear weapons, including unchecked climate change and synthetic microorganisms. The next few centuries of our civilization could very well be its last, warns Loeb, if we do not take precautions. He implies that alien civilizations with the technological prowess to explore the universe are also vulnerable to annihilation by self-inflicted wounds. Perhaps the reason no one has arrived is that no one is left to attempt the journey. This would imply that Oumuamua was the cosmic version of a potsherd, the creation of a long-since-gone society. This, albeit highly hypothetical line of reasoning, could be read as a warning to Earthlings to be cautious of new technologies. For his part, Loeb comes to the exact opposite conclusion. He believes that humanity should be attempting to create a photon-powered vessel that is exactly like Oumuamua. In order to achieve this, he serves as a consultant for the Breakthrough Starshot Initiative, whose stated goal is to demonstrate proof of concept for ultra-fast light-driven nanocrafts. In the long run, the group hopes to lay the foundations for a launch to Alpha Centauri, the star system that is closest to Earth and is located approximately 25 trillion miles away. The astronomer Carl Sagan, who arguably contributed as much as any scientist has done to support the hunt for extraterrestrial life, popularized the saying that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Loeb's assertion plainly falls short of what is frequently called the Sagan standard, and the strongest support he offers for his theory that Oumuamua is an alien craft is that the competing ideas lack merit. We'd be fools not to investigate the possibility that Oumuamua is an alien probe as long as there's a chance of it. However, Loeb explicitly rejects the Sagan standard, saying, "It is not obvious to me why extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence," and turns its logic on its head. Extraordinary conservatism keeps us extraordinarily ignorant. In the meantime, a former intelligence official recently claimed in court that the U.S. government had long known about and covered up evidence of extraterrestrial life. At a House of Representatives hearing on UFOs, the witness, David Grush, said that the Pentagon had discovered biological remains thought to be of non-human origin and crashed vehicles. "I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena, crash retrieval and reverse engineering program to which I was denied access," he said at the hearing. "My testimony is based on information I have been given by individuals with a long-standing track record of legitimacy and service to this country, many of whom also shared compelling evidence in the form of photography, official documentation, and classified oral testimony." Two other witnesses, both of whom were formerly in the Navy, gave testimony at the hearing about their first-hand encounters with UFOs while on the job, including one that was captured on camera in 2004. Any object that is detected that cannot quickly be explained is referred to as a UFO or UAP. While some turn out to be weather balloons, drones, or small aircraft for simple reasons, others are still a mystery. There has been a lot of buzz about the possibility of extraterrestrial life. According to a 2019 Gallup poll, 68% of Americans think that the government of the United States knows more about UFOs than it is willing to disclose. Meanwhile, 33% of American people surveyed thought that some UFO encounters had actually been alien spaceships visiting Earth. Congress convened 2 hearings on UFOs in the past 2 years, resuming its examination of the topic after an almost 60-year absence. The last such proceedings took place in 1966, when Gerald Ford, a congressman at the time, called 2 hearings to explore UFO sightings across the nation, including in southern Michigan. However, no confirmed discovery of extraterrestrial life has been made. Grush claimed that he hasn't personally seen any UFOs, and he declined to publicly elaborate on some of his assertions due to security concerns, but he promised to be more open when they were alone. Grush was asked if anyone had been hurt or killed to hide information concerning extraterrestrial technology, and he replied in the affirmative. Grush also alleged that the military had misappropriated funds allocated for other programs to try to reverse engineer some of the purportedly non-human technology. However, when asked if anyone had been murdered, he said he had to be careful and had directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities. After the contentious congressional hearing, Brian Cox commented on the possibility of alien life. The world's most well-known physicist, Cox, shared his thoughts on the subject on Twitter. In response to inquiries about his opinion of the UFO incident in Congress the day before, he wrote, "I keep being asked what I make of the UFO thing in Congress yesterday, so here it is. I watched a few clips and saw some people who seemed to believe stuff saying extraordinary things without presenting extraordinary evidence. It would be excellent if true, because it would relieve some burden on our civilization if we weren't the sole way for the universe to understand itself within the Milky Way," Cox continued. He concluded by saying, "Sadly, as of today, I still feel that pressure. So can we perhaps focus on not messing our world up rather than hoping that, to paraphrase Sagan, someone will float down to save us from ourselves?" Sue Gough, a spokesperson for the Pentagon, and others insist that Grush's claims are untrue. Others, however, contend that the topic merits scrutiny given the overwhelming volume of UAP reports, whistleblowers, and anecdotes. Despite years of research, scientists have not yet found any evidence of life in the universe. Still, it is very unlikely that Earth is the only home to intelligent life, given the vast number of planets and moons in the universe. The question of whether we will discover evidence in our lifetime is still open. Thanks for watching another episode of Voyager. While you're still here, make sure to click the video on your screen for more mind-blowing videos about space.